Why is India again and again reiterating its clear and bold stance against terrorism? What is the reason that the Minister of External Affairs has gone ahead and clarified that the relations between India and US will not be shaped by Pakistan? What is the evolving nature of Quad nations that we are looking forward to, and what are the times going to bring in terms of implications? Quad Ministers meeting of 2025 is all set to conclude, but herein India has left a clear note that what is our stance on counter-terrorism and how we are not okay with the hypocritic behavior. Our Minister S. Jaishankar has also been very clear about the stance, but the problem herein becomes where US, who is a main key stakeholder, and it is playing to a different tune. Hello everyone, welcome to Vajiram and Ravi's Flash News. My name is Shubhangi Singh, and today we will be understanding the changing landscape of diplomacy as well as this organization that came together to protect the Indo-Pacific region and enhance their stakeholdership, but at the same time we see some cracks developing just like other multilateral organizations at the present time because of the self-centered strategic interests of the present time. So let us begin with understanding what has been the key message of India. So when I talk about our foreign minister here, तो यहाँ पे उन्होंने क्लैरिटी दी है कि इंडिया का जो स्टैंड है वो क्या है टेररिज्म पे. हम इस वक्त बहुत क्लियर भी हैं और यहाँ पे बोल्ड स्टैंड्स भी ले रहे हैं in terms of counter-terrorism efforts as well as counter-terrorism diplomacy, and this has been an added thing that is coming from our foreign minister. He has specially talked and condemned the selective outrage of the Western countries about terrorism. A very good example herein will be the SCO meeting which recently happened in China, where Rajnath Singh, our defense minister, decided to not sign the joint declaration because it did not mention the Pahalgam terror attack, but it did talk about the Balochistan unrest just to put bad light on India. So there is some selective outrage happening where the incidents are being picked on which there will be condemnation by the West, and rest there will be nothing that will be coming from those countries. So this selective outrage has been clearly highlighted, and they have also said that we need to come together so that we have a consensus against every form of terrorism that exists. That means we are also going to target cross-border terror. So when we are talking about countries coming together, हम सिर्फ internally उनको लड़ने के लिए नहीं कह रहे हैं, हम यहाँ पे global consensus की इसलिए बात कर रहे हैं ताकि cross-border terrorism जो है और बाकी forms of terrorism जो है conventional means से जो बाहर जा रहे हैं उनको भी address किया जा सके. So that is why coming together is an important factor, and this kind of hypocrisy, this kind of double standards that we are seeing from the West will not work. So this is high time where India has gone out and said that. We have always understood how West has been doing things, especially where talking about one very specific country, US, as per its own strategic interest, but this time we can see that India is clearly calling it out as well. Now, the key message has been clear, and in this particular meeting, we have also talked about India's position. So our foreign minister has also, external affairs minister has also emphasized that India and US's relation are separate. They are not being shaped by Pakistan, they are not being influenced by Pakistan, be it India or be it US. So if any angle of the relationship that exists individually between US and Pakistan and individually between India and US, they're not going to affect each other, and the focus has been on the bilateralism. That when we are talking about India and US as partners or as allies, we are not going to be influenced or shaped by the actions of Pakistan, right? Again, there has been an emphasis. There have been multiple incidents where India has clearly clarified that the ceasefire that happened after Operation Sindoor was not brokered by US. It was a bilateral thing between India and Pakistan, and it was not done by any third party interference. So you can also see in the tone the scape that is changing, where we are clarifying the fact that whatever is going to be decided, be it India and Pakistan or be it India and USA, it will be coming from our own side. We are standing by our own sovereign means. And this strategically, clearly implies a fact that India is rising to the top. India is taking the top voice in terms of shaping global anti-terror narrative, and we are not focusing on this narrative to limit it to the South Asia. हम यहाँ पर इसको South Asia के beyond ले जाना चाहते हैं. ये हमारा ग्लोबल मैसेज है यहाँ पे कि हम जो है टेरर के साथ नहीं है, टेररिज्म के साथ नहीं, किसी के भी फॉर्म के साथ नहीं है, और यहाँ पर हमें सबको साथ में आने की जरूरत है. हम सिर्फ अपने नेबरहुड पे फोकस नहीं कर रहे हैं. सो दिस ऑल्सो गोज इन लाइन with the idea of India, where we talk about Vasudev Kutumbakam, that whole of the world is our family, that we are a global friend. In this line of dialogue goes in very much line with the global messages that we want. And when we are talking about a global friend, we need to be a very clear global voice also. So we have come at that place where we are clearly voicing it. Now moving to the starting point where we began, we were talking about Quad. So if we look at Quad, it is basically a grouping of 4 nations which have very much interest in protecting the Indo-Pacific region from the expansionist tendency of China. This was the sole reason. If you have to underline, there must be multiple objectives you can find in the document, but if I have to put it in simple words, this was the reason that these 4 countries came together. What are these 4 countries? US, India, Australia and Japan. Now, when we see this particular meeting which is happening between foreign ministers in Washington and it is almost concluded, the core focus areas that have been kept are a little different from the previous meetings, and there are certain challenges that they are facing, which shows a fraction between this very close-knit group which it seemed like when it was formed. Now my question to you is, in which year and what was the purpose? I have briefly given you the purpose, but what was the objective of formation of Quad? Now the core focus areas of this particular meeting have been maritime and transnational security, which is very much in alignment of looking for the interests of the Indo-Pacific region. Then the second core focus has been area of economic security, critical and emerging technologies, where we find critical minerals initiative has also been launched, which is clearly to encounter China's influence, China's dominance in critical minerals. You can understand about it in detail. There is a video which has already been there. You can find it in the playlist of Flash News, where you will understand that what kind of dominance China has in terms of critical minerals. To address that, all sort of critical and emerging technologies, especially this initiative, has been a main outcome of this particular meeting. And another focus area has been humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. Now let us look at the outcomes of this particular meeting. So as I said, the first main outcome was the critical minerals initiative, and it was to reduce China dependence, because this supply in terms of the global order, the majority of it comes from China. Not just the supply, but the processing also. Even Australia, which is producing critical minerals, sends it to processing for China. So if we want to reduce the dependence, we would have to change that. Second, there has been a joint condemnation of terrorism, and there has been an updated document which includes the mention of Pahalgam terror attack. Now this also highlights the fact that the initial document did not talk about this, and wherein the statement of our minister comes from, that selective outrage will not work. So the updated document has this. Second, there is a rejection of unilateral actions. So when we are talking about unilateral actions, that means country based on their own interest, strategic interest, they are undermining the purpose of multilateral organization. And if we are part of multilateral organizations, we have to work towards a common goal or objective. And if that is not happening, we are moving towards a world of unilateralism, at max bilateralism. So if we don't want that, then we have to avoid unilateral actions. Now, this was a direct hint towards China and its actions that they will have repercussions. Again, going back to the core objective because of which Quad was made, to counter China's influence. So if you see the two major outcomes, अभी भी यहाँ पे जो मेजर आउटकम्स हैं वो डायरेक्टली किसको काउंटर कर रहे हैं, वो यहाँ पे चाइना के एक्सपेंशन को, चाइना के डोमिनेंस को काउंटर करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. बट एज मच एज देयर हैज बीन अ कंसोलिडेटेड आउटकम, ये G7 की समिट की तरह नहीं रही जहां पे हमें एक तरह का फेलियर देखने को मिला. SCO मीटिंग की तरह नहीं जहां पे इंडिया ने उसे फाइनल डिक्लेरेशन में ज्वाइन नहीं किया. बट यहाँ पर फिर भी एक फ्रैक्चर जो है हमें बहुत बड़ा नजर आ रहा है in terms of challenge. What is that challenge? That challenge is US President Donald Trump. In simplest words, if I have to put here, कि challenge क्या है? Challenge ये particular person है. Why? Because the purpose of Quad has been to control the influence of China, and he is siding towards China. So if he is growing towards China, if he is moving towards China, then it is creating a confusion within the organization that was meant for the exactly opposite purpose. Apart from that, Quad, which it has shown in the outcomes, stands together and it holds a very important place in the Indo-Pacific region. But this particular unpredictability, if we talk about, that remains a major challenge that we have seen in past few years, and if it is not addressed, then the purpose of such groupings will gradually lose essence as well. Now, in the end, let us look at the present US-India relations in the light of the recent events that have taken place. Be it meeting of Asim Munir with President Donald Trump, be it Donald Trump openly and again saying that he has brokered the ceasefire between India and Pakistan using the idea of trade deal. Where does India and US relations stand as of now? So this has been the first high-level meeting after Operation Sindoor, and there has been certain important Indian messages that have come out. Two important things that have come out. First, there has been a clear pushback on the fact that US has not intervened. There has been no foreign intervention when India's own strategic sovereign interests are in question. Second, they have sought all sort of assurances in terms of critical minerals access, tech sharing and tariff exemptions. Now, when we are talking about the trade deal, which is yet to be finalized, trade agreement between India and US before the July 9 deadline of the 90 days pause, this assurance has been sought by India on critical mineral access as well as sharing and the tariff exemptions that will come along. But at the same time, we cannot go light on the bilateral tensions that actually exist between India and US. Because recently we saw that President Donald Trump went ahead and said that if people are buying oil from Russia, he will be slapping them up with 500% tariffs. And that has come through Graham Bill. We are one of the countries which are buying Russian oil. So if we are buying Russian oil, then that means that our exports will suffer with one of our biggest markets. No, that creates a point of contention. Other than that, US has a lot of pressure on India, especially on the proximity that we share with Russia, how we have stood with Russia even in the chaotic times where we were expecting to say certain things against our ally, long-time ally. So these are the points of contention, and India is expected that it should be lobbying for a carve-out, but that is not happening as of now. So we need to understand the points of contention so that they can be remediated in the coming times. But we also have to acknowledge that there is a factor, that is our neighborhood country, which is influencing our relations with US. So if we talk about US and Pakistan re-engagement, I have dealt with this particular topic in detail when we were talking about US and President Donald Trump meeting up with Asim Munir. You can go and look into that video. It will give you a clear perspective that why US is inclining towards Pakistan more, and does it seem like a repetition of history as well. But yet again, in this particular meeting also, there was Pakistan's Air Force chief who has met senior US defense officials. There have been conversations about exchange in terms of tech, joint exercises. That clearly suggest that there is a strategic hedging to make sure that they are able to pick and choose as per the situation that is in front of us. Now, to conclude, if we talk about India's response, we have reaffirmed that our ceasefire with Pakistan was bilateral, and we have also talked about that our strategic autonomy lies with ourselves, and we are standing with non-alignment again in the version of non-alignment 2.0. Now, that was all from my side. If you have any doubts or concerns, you can put it down in the comment section. That was all. Thank you so much.